A Mother's Actions, 1,318 words. An owl called out a mournful cry to the stars. The palace itself slept under the glow of the moon that summer night. Then again, almost every night in the Fire Nation was like summer. Almost everyone in the castle was asleep. Almost. Lady Ursa slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Ozai, snoring away, dreaming of his final conquering moment when the world would be his. Silently stepping into her slippers, she slid out of the bedroom, closing the heavy door behind her, and moved into the empty hallway. Walking down the maroon carpets, she held her hand to the wall. Even in the blackness of the dark, she knew exactly where she was and how to get where she wanted. After a few minutes of tiptoeing, stopping, listening for servants moving around, and then continuing on, Lady Ursa reached the door she wanted. Running her fingers over the carved flame insignia in the center of the door face, Ursa took a breath contemplating her mission. She closed her eyes, turned the handle, and pushed her way into the room. For a second, Lady Ursa forgot her reasons for stepping foot into the room in the first place. The grandeur flooded her senses. The canopied king bed had its thick curtains pulled down, while the decorative red silk was drawn over them. The rug was so soft and inviting, as if one could sleep on it comfortably, and the window had been left open to let a breeze in to circulate the humid air. Glancing outward to the city below, the soon-to-be Fire Lady sighed sadly. Opening her robe, she fingered a small orange bottle. Drawing the drapes to the bed, Ursa rested her eyes on her father-in-law. It was almost his time to go anyway. What would a few days, or even weeks before then matter? Yet she knew the answer. A life could be lost. Her only son would be dead before Azulon passed on. Gently, as to not shake the bed and wake the old man, Lady Ursa crawled over and sat. Pulling her black hair into a bun behind her shoulders, she reached over with the bottle, her hand shaking slightly as she administered the liquid. The ancient Fire Lord sputtered slightly and coughed for a moment. Ursa's eyes opened wide in fear. Drawing back her slender hand, she gasped as Lord Azulon's golden eyes opened to her face. Scurrying back from the bed, Ursa's heart beat faster and faster. The bedsheets ruffled as the old man threw them off to get up. He stumbled over to where she stood near the open window. Ursa clutched the orange bottle. All traces of the liquid had been given to the Fire Lord, but she knew the drug would take at least a few minutes, maybe half an hour to take effect, even on the old man who now stood before her. Azulon took a deep breath, removing his old crinkled hands from his night robe's sleeves, and let a flame flicker to life near Ursa's face. The moon alone had not allowed enough light to shine into the room for Azulon's old golden eyes to see, yet with the flame, a shock came to his face. Ursa felt his surprise. She smiled inwardly, knowing this would make the drug work faster, moving to his whole body sooner. The elderly Fire Lord took another step forward. The flame's heat licked at Ursa's face. If she could only get him to stay for a few more minutes in the same agitated state, she would not be caught. Her hold tightened around the bottle. The flame was pulled away and brightened. Wincing, Ursa saw the gnarled hand reaching for hers, the one with the bottle. She pulled the hand back, but not before he caught it with uncharacteristically fast reflexes. In surprise, she pulled the orange vial back, putting too much stress on the fragile glass, cracking it into many pieces. Wincing, Ursa dropped him to the rug. Glancing to where the Fire Lord's hand had been, Ursa gasped. Blood started to run from the places where the glass embedded itself in his thin skin. Flames burst from his hands, simple red flames. The room was illuminated in blood-colored light as Ursa backed to the window. Her back hit the opening as a blast was sent towards her. It missed, flying out the window and exploding into the open air above the courtyard where she ducked. Shuffling to the side, the next blasts were met with the wall, scorching the expensive tapestries and blackening the red paint. Almost at the door, a hand closed around her own. The warmth burned her wrist, but it was bearable against what she had first experienced with her husband. Twisting around, Ursa muttered a small gasp. Azulon was sinking into the floor. The carpet had caught fire around him, yet he still held onto her hand. The drug was taking effect finally. Azulon's eyes sunk as he looked up to meet his killers. Where soft, forgiving eyes had once been, fierce ones glared back. Azulon collapsed, finally letting go of Ursa's wrist, leaving a ring of red, a bracelet of burns for her to remember him by. Just before Azulon took his last breath, he heard Ursa speak for the first time, but his mind shut down before he could decipher the meaning. He heard something about turtle ducks, babies, and a mother. Slipping out of the Fire Lord's room, Lady Ursa made her way down the dark hall. Her plans for a quiet death for her father-in-law had been a failure. Her life now rested where her sons had once been, in danger. Scurrying past her own room, she grabbed her simplest brown cloak from the nearby shelf. Just as she was about to leave, she thought to Zuko, her son she had risked her life for. Smiling sadly, a tear slipped down her face and fell to the ground. Walking quickly, she headed to the direction of her children's rooms. Opening one door, she looked onto a sleeping Azula. Pulling the ruffled covers over her daughter, Ursa smiled. "Be good, Azula. I love you." Turning away, she slipped out of the room, leaving the door open. Golden eyes flicked back to life. Bedsheets were ruffled again, and a small form followed out the door and into the hall after Ursa. But she did not notice the presence and continued to her son's room. Leaning over his sleeping form, Ursa felt she needed to let him know she loved him and what she had done for him. She shook his shoulders gently as she woke him. Zuko, my love, listen to me. Everything I've done to protect you. Remember, Zuko, never forget who you are." She turned away then, a tear sliding down her pale face. She lifted her hood. Zuko slid back into bed and fell asleep without a thought, while Azula's golden eyes watched her mother slip out of the palace unnoticed by all, except her.